Okay, we're rolling. How have the changes in agriculture over the last 50 years impacted the environment, animal welfare, and our health?
I think just the way in which we really started to pursue agriculture, particularly after World War II, is really rather astounding and frightening. In fact, when you look at what we did in order to translate wartime materials into peacetime materials, so-called, we were still really in a war on the environment. Certainly, with regard to munitions, the use of all that nitrogen-based material, turning that into fertilizer, turning defoliants into herbicides, turning insecticides, that were used in the Pacific theater primarily, and actually bringing those into, the warfare on the fields. Those pieces all had a really significant impact in terms of agriculture and really the way we see agriculture as, not something that is sort of this virtuous cycle of life, but really a theater of war, and that's the wrong way to be viewing it, in my personal opinion.
What are the main concerns you have about the current food or agricultural and farming systems?
So certainly, my focus of late has been on pesticides. I'm someone who I was involved with pesticides and utilizing pesticides, both in the Italian Alps when I was farming there, using those in fruit agriculture, primarily vineyards and orchards. And my grandfather also developed a lot of pesticide spray programs for the Southeast in his work on fruits. And so pesticides were not something that were exotic or unknown to me. It's not something that I ever liked, appreciated, and certainly it's the most miserable part of agriculture. Having to put on the rubber suit and then also respirator. You're doing something wrong, when you're in that scenario. So, in terms of impact, I think it's pretty significant. We're seeing all kinds of biodiversity crashes at the moment. Some folks talk about the sixth extinction that's happening. People described insectageddon, the Armageddon basically of insect populations. Of course, birds follow suit in that regard. And then we also look at just what's happening in terms of chronic illness, for the American population, where, by many measures, more than half of the U.S. population is chronically ill at this point. And I think that indicates there's a problem.
The sustainability movement has often focused on small, organic, local agriculture within a community, but what are the limitations for this sort of agricultural system within the overall food system? What are the successes of these sorts of agricultural systems?
So I think in terms of scale, actually, the place we've missed the boat is thinking that somehow large-scale industrialized agriculture was going to turn the tide and create a better world. I think it's arguable that that's not the case. I think what people don't realize is that depending on whose numbers you use, in terms of food production worldwide, it's still 75 to 90% of the food is produced on these small-scale, very often diversified farms. So I don't think we have a problem, in terms of small-scale agriculture. I think the problem really is in the detrimental effects that really are wrought upon us by virtue of the larger scale. I guess I would say, in addition to that, though, that it's not always about the scale. It really is about the management practices that are employed. So, not everybody deserves a ding in terms of, choosing for a larger scale. But there is a point at which things can go too far. And I think whenever we can hold on to small-scale diversified agriculture, then we're healthier as humans, our communities are healthier, it's a healthier landscape, and I think ultimately, it's just a much more pleasant world to live in.
Are there studies showing health issues related to chemicals, pesticides, or fertilizers in our drinking water?
So there are studies, they're coming out more and more all the time. I think a great resource for people to try to get at the peer-reviewed literature and really start to understand it. One of the best resources is Beyond Pesticides, NGO based in Washington, D.C., where what they have really done such a great job in is looking at the scientific research, trying to categorize it in terms of different kinds of pesticides, different impacts of those pesticides, and where pesticides show up in water, what are the issues in terms of the endocrine system, the neurological system. They really do a fantastic job in that regard. Also, Pesticide Action Network, which is international. They're fantastic. Pesticide Action Network, North America, PANA. Then another resource is certainly Natural Resources Defense Council, also doing really good work. So, we need some help in getting into the literature because it's so complex. And in some cases, the distillation of the literature, just helps us figure out how to kind of walk our way into this world, because it's a labyrinth as you try to understand the scientific literature and the impact that pesticides are going to have on human health and environmental health.